Test, test. Hey, Tom, that's a great background.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I pulled up your FAQ
Okay.
um, and the letter we wrote. So um,
And Coach, did you see the chat message that there's about a 22 to 25-second delay from Zoom to what's actually showing on YouTube?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what that means, but
It just means that if someone types a question in the YouTube in your moderating, there's just going to kind of be an awkward pause there.
okay, that works.
Okay, there we go. I'm on.
hi, Jen.
Hi there.
So are we ready to get started? It's a little bit after 7.
Let's roll.
So I guess I'll start. I'm Steve Barrett, Superintendent. I want to welcome everybody. A couple parents requested that we have a meeting to kind of talk about our combined middle school football program, where we brought middle school East and South together to join middle school West. And we have Coach Tom Fogel here tonight and our athletic director, Jen Henley. This is a Zoom meeting that we're in, but hopefully we have some parents tuned into YouTube, and there's a chat function on YouTube where you can ask questions, and we'll try to answer them. So we can get started. Jen and Tom, did you want to say anything about how things are going so far, or?
I can, absolutely. It's been phenomenal. We're 3 days into conditioning. We had 88 kids last week on Monday. We had 83 kids this week on Monday, and we had 85 kids today. Pretty evenly divided between 7th grade and 8th grade. So
Great.
the kids are working hard. Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I'm really excited about it.
That's great. So are there any questions on Jeff that we see on YouTube? I know there's about a 20-second delay between the questions and our ability to see them. So we apologize for that.
Well, and I can address one thing that, well, I have several things that came up. Some parents have emailed me just independently some questions that maybe it'll clarify some things. Probably the biggest question was, what are they going to be responsible for paying for this year during football season? And the answer to that is really very little. Really, the only thing that parents will need to provide this year are going to be cleats. We do not provide their cleats. I would, as parents are going out and looking at purchasing cleats for the season, I would ask that they try to do and provide and purchase cleats that are going to match our uniforms. Our uniforms, we have black pants, we have blue pants, and we have gold pants. So ideally we can, if we can stay in the neutral colors, the blacks, the whites, the royal blues, that's really helpful, staying away from the greens and the reds, because they definitely do not look really good with our uniforms. And also, I wanted to let parents know that we have a ton, probably 60 pairs of cleats that have been donated, and they are in our equipment room for kids to use. So especially if you don't want to buy the cleats now, but they want to wear them during the summer, we have a whole bunch available. So
Right. So Tom, could you talk about why coaches felt like it was a good idea? And I know, Jen, you worked hard on this, and we met with coaches, the high school program, and determined that getting a combined team going was actually safer and better for kids and better for the middle school program and the high school program. Do either of you want to talk about that a little bit, the reasoning behind that?
Sure, I can start. This in being my first year, I think these conversations had started prior to my arrival, at least the idea of it. When I came through back in August, one of the things that stood out to me, one, we were already combined with East and West in 8th grade due to numbers. And when I looked at the numbers of the other programs, they were shockingly low compared to what I guess what I had expected. And after the season, Tom and I met, and then we met with the all football staffs from all 3 schools to just have a roundtable discussion about what's best for our kids and providing a positive experience. And through the course of several months and a lot of research, this was ultimately the plan that we put forward to move in this direction.
Yeah, thank you, Tom and Jen. And for the last couple of years, right, middle school East and West have been a combined team.
that's correct.
Right? You want to talk
That
about
is
that?
correct.
How did that
Yeah.
weigh into the decision?
It weighed heavily into the decision because at all 3 schools we've been struggling numbers wise, and as it stands right now, it ended up being a really good decision because as of right now at the 8th grade level, we have 64 total athletes signed up. 32 of those are from Middle School West, 14 of those are from Middle School South, and 18 of those are from Middle School East. At 7th grade level, we have a total right now of 67 athletes signed up for football. 41 of those are at Middle School West, 15 of those are at Middle School South, and 11 of those are at Middle School East.
Mm-hmm.
But at the 8th grade level, so far, we have 14 no-shows, kids that we have not seen at all this summer. At 7th grade level, we have 21 no-shows. So that puts us, our numbers, I think, are going to settle right around 50 to 55 at each 7th and 8th grade level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are you handling and addressing the higher numbers in terms of coaching?
We've got a great coaching staff. We have 13 coaches. All of them are phenomenal. So far for our conditioning sessions, because we have to be in small groups, we've been dividing up by position groups. So Mondays are our offensive days and Wednesdays are our defensive days. And so we break the kids up into nine players with an actual position coach. So they go through all of their conditioning drills with a conditioning coach, or with a position coach, excuse me. And I mean, our kids from Middle School West, this is kind of a normal thing for them because we've had 8 or 9 coaches there. But I think for the South and the East players, it's going to be a really great experience for them because we do a ton of individual and group work. We don't just go to practice and line up and teach plays. We spend probably 45 minutes to an hour at the beginning of practice in individual and group sessions, where kids get they're broken up again in small groups, and wide receivers have a wide receiver coach, and running backs have a running back coach, and linebackers have a linebacker coach. And that's really new for a lot of players. It's very, very much like our varsity program.
Okay. Okay, good, Tom. Thank you. How will, so we have a question on the chat. How will players from South and East be transported to the practices during school? So that's our first question.
Well, I can take that one. We have been in a similar situation with wrestling last winter and girls lacrosse this past spring. So we are working on school transportation to pick up the students from each location and drop off to West. And coach has kind of has predicted to adjust his practice schedule to allow time for those players to arrive at the school, to change, and then obviously warm up appropriately and join the West players who are already there in and out of the locker room and more than likely on the field to provide space for the other two groups to attend. And then parents would pick up at West after practice.
Okay, thank you. So our second question is about the A and B team. I know when we first started talking about this, it was important for us with the greater numbers to have playing time. If kids didn't get to play on the A team, there'd be playing time on the B team. And so this question addresses that. So will the A team and B team learn to run the same plays is the first part of the question.
Well, and I can address the A team, B team based on our numbers right now. I'm not sure that we'll have an A team and a B team. I'm not sure that we will have the numbers to support two separate teams. Time will tell. A lot of that is based on personnel too. But what we're looking at doing right now is probably based on our numbers. We're probably going to be looked at what would be a platoon system. So we'll have some players that only play offense. We'll have some players that only play defense, but then we'll have some players that play on both sides of the ball. So it's going to be kind of a hybrid system where when we would go into practice, say, if today is an offensive practice, there would be a group of probably, we're looking at maybe 14, 15, 16 eighth graders and 14, 15, 16 seventh graders that would go with a set of position coaches, and on an offensive day, they would be purely defensive players. And so then when we would get into our team sessions, it will allow us to really be able to practice really, really well. We won't have to deal with, okay, let's grab 4 or 5 kids for a scout team over here. We'll already have our scout teams already scripted and ready to go. And then that'll switch over the next day, which would be a defensive day. There will be a group of, 15 or 16-ish, depending on how it all shakes out, 7th and 8th graders that would only practice offense. And so then they would become our offensive scout team at the end of that practice. We're also looking at playing 5th quarter games at all of our home games. We can't control what our opponents do, so we can't guarantee that for our away games, but, we're certainly going to make every attempt to play 5th quarter games at our home games too. And if our numbers would jump up as we get closer to August, then, we will adjust and look at trying to schedule some B games. But we're not going into the season at this point planning on having 2 separate schedules.
So the other part of this question involves playing time. So what it says is if a player on the A team doesn't get much playing time, will they get to play a little bit on the B team? But it sounds like we're going to address this because we don't have quite enough for A and B.
Probably not.
Try and address this by having a 5th quarter so that we can ensure. And then you said the platoon system. So, a group of kids will go in, another group will come off, and you'll try to create playing time for everybody.
Absolutely. Like our goal will be to have very few players. I think with 50 or 55 players on a team, we shouldn't have to have very many guys going both ways. There will probably be a few, especially in certain situations. But in general, our hope is that we have 11 guys on offense that are starters and 11 different guys on defense that are starters. So, and then, immediate subs for each one of those positions.
Yeah. So it
So-
sounds like, Tom, the way you're describing this, it's important. The goal is always to win a game, right? But there's a higher purpose in middle school. We want to
Yes.
develop kids and we want to play them. And sometimes, that gets missed at the middle school level. So it's really what
A
you're
lot of
talking,
times it does.
you're
We
talking
play a
about.
lot of teams at the middle school level who, what I would say, they have coaches that do some questionable things, in order to win, where winning is their main objective. And you'll find out with me, I love to win, don't get me wrong, but I'm more concerned with them learning skills that they can then take to the next level and become better football players.
So it's sort of, would it be safe to say it's a development model? You really want to develop kids in
Absolutely.
positions. And so our third question is it even possible to have an A and a B team, given that the game schedule has already been put out? Do you want to address that, Jim or Jen?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. I think what we have to take a look at is what other programs would be in our same situation, or who has the history of having some of these larger teams that could possibly be looking for that. The OCC, our league will not provide a secondary schedule in this situation. But I believe with Coach's background and years in, that he's got a good grasp on who we could possibly reach out to and schedule some additional games if we are in that situation. But that's very much let's wait and see. And then we need to also reach out to our opponents and see what their rosters look like at that time.
If with the fifth quarter, Tom, would you work that out with a coach when they showed up at a home game for us, or would that be worked out before, or how would you handle that?
Well, ideally, we try to work that out beforehand. The goal would be to plan that, because a lot of times that also has to be coordinated with officials. Our goal is going to be to reach out, especially for our 4 away opponents, where my hope is that we'll reach out to them too and say, hey, if you've got, 45 or 50 kids, would it be possible, would you guys be interested in playing a fifth quarter? Most of them do, because, that's a great way to be able to get everybody significant playing time.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. So the next question is, with 50 to 50 or 55 to 50 kids on a team, 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense, and then 28 kids as subs, instead of a B team, I guess the question is really getting at, why don't we have enough it seems like maybe to the questioner that there's enough numbers for a B team. What are we looking at as a tipping point to create a B team? Might be a good way to try to answer that.
I don't know that there's an exact number. I think you'd have to be pushing probably 70 kids in order to, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to put a group of kids on the field that are just going to go somewhere and get blown out. That's no fun either. And that's, you've got to be able to, you kind of have to be able to balance that. 50 is a great number. If we are in the 60s, we're going to have to look at maybe calling some opponents and saying, hey, we've got 60 kids. And even if we do that, I mean, there's not a separate team that's a B team. There will be a group of athletes that we identify any given week, and we'd say, hey, this would be a great, if Big Walnut has 65 kids too, and they'd be interested in playing on a Tuesday. Great. We'll identify 30 kids that don't play a whole bunch. We'll put them together. There's nothing different. We don't change our practices. Everybody practices with the same coaches, and we would send a group of coaches with them, or provide a group of coaches on the game field, and we'd go at it. So it's, when we say A and B, it's definitely not two separate entities. Right. It's not going to change anything.
So it's one team, one identity, and then trying to develop kids on a B schedule if we can identify teams that want to play.
Correct.
So this is a question about the fifth quarter. So how does the fifth quarter affect the score of the game after the fourth quarter? Essentially, is the game already over? Does the team who wins, and then at the end of the fourth quarter is sort of like a normal way we would think about it?
Yeah, I mean, and we've done it different ways through the years. A lot of it just, it kind of depends on, who the coaches are. The one year Middle School East and Middle School West played each other, and both teams actually had big numbers. And we played a fifth quarter and we counted it only because it was an in-district game and the coaches had talked about it beforehand. I'd say most of the time at the end of the fourth quarter, the scoreboard goes, the score goes off. We usually put 15 minutes on the clock and then we just go play football and kind of keep a running clock except for, change of possession and out of bounds, but or usually penalties. Out of bounds usually doesn't stop the clock, but it gives us a chance. And we don't do special teams usually in that fifth quarter because your specialty, you don't want to have to try to scramble. It doesn't make any sense to do it that way, but it gives kids an opportunity to get in and run offensive plays and run defensive plays and have some fun.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Our next question is so one family is on vacation. So the question is, will kids be able to try out for positions they're interested in on both sides of the ball? In this particular case, the athlete hasn't been able to play because they're on vacation.
Yeah, at this point, everybody will have an offensive position and a defensive position, and that'll be true all the way through probably the first week of August after we get into contact, because there's no way if a kid is a great defender unless you can see him tackle. So we won't go into our hybrid system until August. And yeah, in general, what we do, especially with seventh graders, we kind of let them, when they come in for conditioning, all those kids, we've asked every kid, what position you want to play on offense? What position you want to play on defense? Now, there's a few that have been unrealistic, and we've made some changes already because I want kids to be successful. But yeah, we let them start kind of where they want.
Yeah, I remember in some of our discussions about creating a combined team, when we didn't have the numbers, kids were kind of playing out of positions. And so they might have been, in possibly dangerous situations because they were forced to play, let's say, guard or tackle, and they weren't really, they may not have had the size to do that. And so that was a concern. This is a question about positions. And so it says, following up on positions, if coaches feel someone would be better suited in a position that maybe the athlete hasn't identified initially, will that be discussed with them? So in other words, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We always talk to the kids. I mean, if a kid has said he wants to be a running back and, he is obviously not a running back and he's not going to be successful there, we're going to put, we can't put our arm around him now, but, in general, we're going to, say to that kid, listen, this is just not the best choice for you, but there are other places that you can play that, you're going to be really successful. Occasionally I'll have a kid that says, no, I really want to be a running back. Okay. But understand, the chance of you actually getting significant time as a running back is probably not going to be what you want. And normally once they realize that, I can't play this position, they eventually make the switch. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at this point. But we did send out a frequently asked question list that Jen, you and Tom worked on. And it, I think we might go to that. How is playing time determined, Tom?
That's a great question. I'm not going to lie, our best athletes generally end up being our starters. But I can honestly say that our athletes that give us effort in practice play, bottom line. But I'm also going to be honest that we have a lot of kids that don't play much, and they're okay with that. And when you come to one of our practices, you'll see some kids over on the sideline and they're kind of hanging out, kind of making sure that the coaches don't see them because they, either they don't know what they're doing or they're not sure. I'm not going to beg a kid to play. I'm not going to beg a kid to come off the sideline and jump in unless I absolutely need a body. We script our practices very, very pretty much down to the minute, and personnel is scripted. Our scout teams are scripted. But if kids are showing effort and they're working hard and they're jumping in on scout team, and, we always tell the kids, hey, if you're not playing a position that, if you don't think you're getting the minutes you should be getting, then get on a scout team and prove us wrong. And that's probably where most of our kids earn playing time that might not have stood out early on is by really, really jumping in and showing a lot of effort. If they show effort, they play in games. We find a place.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. The next question is along those lines. So is it that the kids essentially are competing each week for a position in the starting lineup?
In the past, it hasn't been that way. If you were a starter, you were probably a starter because there was nobody else. There was nobody else pushing you. But yeah, I think we're going to have some serious competitions this year. We're really excited about that. That we will. We're going to have a quarterback competition. We're going to have some running back competitions, and yeah, it's going to be, if you have a really good week of practice, you might start this week over the kid that started last week, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I think what you're getting at before is you didn't really have the numbers to have that sort of dynamic you just described.
No, we didn't. We had a quarterback at Middle School West. We would try to manufacture a backup, because if something happens to your starting quarterback, you got to be able to have somebody to take the snap. And we always did. But, we never, if we had a core, very few, in the 8 years now that I've done this, I don't think we've ever had a real true quarterback competition, but we'll have one this year. And I'm excited about that.
Okay. So there's a clarification question here about having 13 coaches. Will they be divided by 7th and 8th grade teams? And that's affirmative, right?
Yeah, they will be. All 13 of our coaches coach all of our kids. We don't have just 8th grade coaches and just 7th grade coaches. Everything that we do with our coaches is by position. So whether you're a 7th or an 8th grader, if you're a running back, doesn't matter. Coach O'Kane will be your coach. Now, on game days, we have a group of 7th grade coaches and a group of 8th grade coaches. Yes.
Okay.
But in a practice situation, if you will have a position coach regardless of your grade level. That way, every kid hears exactly the same thing.
Okay. And how will that translate? I know our high school coaches were excited about that.
Yeah.
Talking here about, horizontal alignment. So alignment between 7th and well, that's still really vertical alignment,
Yeah.
7th and 8th grade. So they have an understanding, but that vertical alignment actually will carry up to the high school level as well, right?
Yeah, we've met with the high school staff. Our offensive and defensive playbooks have been designed based on everything that they do. Our terminology is exactly the same. They're a lot more complicated than we're going to be. We've kind of pared things down to kind of keep it simple. And we want our kids to develop good fundamentals, good techniques, but still be able to understand the terminology. Our 8th graders, when they go to the 9th grade, and they hear belly is belly, and when they hear, Boa and Hawk. I mean, they'll know what those terms mean defensively. And, the positions, all of our positions are exactly, they're exactly identical. We don't have multiple different positions.
Yeah.
So it's all been, everything that we do is based on our meetings with the high school staff.
So that code language you were using, if Pickerington somehow got on this chat, they're not going to get an advantage.
It's all good.
Okay. All right. So I think that there's, I see another question. Sorry. So last year, parent fans shouted, "Go West," because it was a combined West and East team. This year, we'll be shouting, "Go Southeast."
Southeast.
That's good. I like that.
We could just go Lions too.
Go Lions. Yeah. So there's a clarification question here. Will we be mixing 7th graders and 8th graders in practice?
During our individual and our group sessions, our 7th and 8th graders are mixed. Yes, that is correct, because they work with position coaches on technique and fundamentals. Then when we go into our team session where we actually run plays, our 8th grade will be on one practice field and our 7th grade will be on the other practice field. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So on our on the FAQ you worked on, Tom, that went out to parents earlier in the year, there was a question about homeschooled kids who may want to play, or kids coming in from St. Matthews. Do you want to say anything about that at this point?
That happens just about every year. We'll get either a homeschooled kid, or we've had some kids from Eagle Wings that are not necessarily in our district, but they live in our district, but don't go to school in our district. And yeah, that is an Ohio High School Athletic Association rule that you can play football. If your school does not have football, you can absolutely play football at your home school. We welcome those kids.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So Tom, I know we were officially supposed to start August 3rd, but we've started a little earlier because OHSAA waived the period of no contact. And one of the things we know is that for the last 9 weeks of the school year, athletes weren't able to mingle with one another, weren't able to practice. And we met and we talked about how important it was for kids for their mental health and well-being to get out there, to run around, to practice with one another. And so we've opened up, we're in phase 1. We'll go to phase 2 next week, where we'll have a little loosening of the numbers. But right now it's 1 coach per 9 kids, which isn't easy for you guys to coach. But with COVID-19 mandates and recommendations from the governor's office, we're following them to a T, and we want to thank parents for helping us with symptom checks and all of those things. So we've begun practice a little bit earlier than normal. Do you want to talk about the schedule moving forward, Tom, in the this summer? So is August 3rd still an important day, or?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. We actually will stay in phase 1 only because it works out for our schedule. We're going to stay in phase 1 an additional week.
Okay.
So we're going to plan on moving to phase 2 on Monday, July 29th. So what we are calling for us, phase 1, is simply conditioning. You're allowed to do fundamentals, techniques, things like that. You can even do some teaching within your group. That's why we're in position groups. But we can't teach plays, and we can't do any of that kind of stuff. The hope is, based on what we're seeing for phase 2, looks like our numbers can go up a little bit now, as long as we're running outside practices. That's where we're kind of calling those our camp days as we get into phase 2 in July, where we can start actually teaching some of our offense and some of our defense, and putting groups of linemen together, and starting to work on some schemes and do some pursuit drills with our defense and things like that. So we'll look at doing those in July, which through our phase 2, and then obviously for us, the hope is phase 3 will begin on August 3rd. And that's for Ohio High School. That is the first true coaching day. You're allowed 10 coaching days in the summer, and those are going to be our phase 2 days. It worked out for us exactly 10 days. And that's why we did it that way. And then we will hopefully move into phase 3 starting on August 3rd. And that is a big day because that's the day that all paperwork has to be in, physicals have to be turned in. No players can participate without being totally green in final forms and a physical in our hands, and all that stuff. And the other important thing, and this has come up in a couple of parents who have emailed me, I've got 2 parents right now that have told me that they're going to miss that first week of August because of vacations. Those days are required days, and that's not my rule. Those are required by Ohio High School Athletic Association as acclimation days. And if you miss those days, you then have to make them up the following week or whenever you return. So I have 2 players right now who are going to miss all 5 acclimation days, which means they're actually going to miss the next week, because when we're in contact the following week, they won't be. That's just the way it is. And, we're going to work through that. But those first 5 days are hugely important because you've got to get those acclimation days in before you can get into full contact that following week.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
More questions. So given the numbers, will games still be played at West? And that's affirmative, yes, right?
That is an affirmative.
And has consideration been given to the fans and seating? So we're excited to let everyone know that we're redoing the track at Middle School West, and not just the top part of the track, but the actual base of the track. So a lot of work will be done to make that track just really nice. So there'll be a cement foundation, and that'll be poured before school starts, and then there'll be a new rubber surface to it. And I believe Scott Laughlin, our business director, is going to try to put some stands there. Now, whether or not we'll be able to sit next to each other, it's probably unlikely. I was just on a phone call with other superintendents in the Franklin County Health Department today, and they're still talking about 6 feet of distance is really important, layering with masks and those sorts of things. So we're hoping we can have fans at games, but I think we're still going to have to make sure people practice social distancing and all those sorts of things. And then there was another question connected to that. And it is, God forbid, if there's an outbreak, what happens with the team? So if there was an actual student or coach with COVID, we would contact the health department. The health department would do what they call contact tracing, and anybody who was in 6 feet of that student or coach for more than 15 minutes would be contacted, and they would go back and trace the previous 48 hours, whoever the symptomatic person was, who were they in contact with. And we would probably suspend practice for a number of days, make sure the locker room was clean. And we would take the health department's direction in that, and we would play that to a T, just like we're doing phase 1 here to a T. And it's a lot of extra work for our coaches, for our athletic director, Jen, and Kat Harris at the high school. But we think it's important, and disinfecting and all of those things need to happen. We can't have kids sharing water bottles. And so this is still real serious. There's, the numbers have been flat, thank goodness, in Ohio, but they're going up in 21 states. And, You know, there's been a resurgence in China, and Beijing just shut down their schools. So we're monitoring all of that. And I can't say enough about the Franklin County Health Department. I email them almost daily. They get right back to us. If a coach has a question or athletic director, we get that question to the health department and they turn around the answer very, very quickly. So just know that your health department has been very supportive of our schools in Gahanna and across Franklin County. It's been really great to work with them. I think I answered are there additional plans for COVID-19 and the parents and the fans? So I think I answered that by talking about social distancing and those kinds of things. So we talked about practice officially starting on the 3rd. Tom, you've kind of touched on vacation. Do you want to talk about family vacations in August? I think you kind of touched on that those were acclimation days, right? So those were really important times to be there.
The first 5 days are probably the most important. I actually had another parent contacted me about missing a couple of days the following week, and they're already acclimated at that point. And so missing anything else besides those 5 days is not nearly as big of a deal. And really, we only have the one, really, we have that full week, and then we have a couple of days, and then we're back in school. If I'm remembering correctly, because I think we're back a little bit early this year. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the August calendar yet, but
we're back.
I know we don't.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we don't have a ton of time in August to really worry about. So hopefully we can get vacations if you're trying to plan one. Try to get them out of the way in July. That's easier said than done right now, but I would try to avoid. No one knows yet what school's going to look like, but I wouldn't. I would try to avoid August as much as possible.
Avoid going out of town in August.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, here's a good question about paperwork. It says, has all the required paperwork been sent out, or is there a list of all that is needed by August 3rd?
I can answer that, and I'm sure Tom can follow up. But we initially during we were recessed with COVID, some emails had gone out, and it included some links to Final Forms, which is our online paperwork system that we use at the middle school. It's also used at the high school, so it makes that transition really easy. Within that format is a place for you to print off the form you need to take to get a physical, so that you don't have to fill out the health history twice, once on paper and once online. So it's pretty convenient with that. And I'm sure Coach has those links he can continue to send out as we progress through the summer.
Yeah, and I've sent it out once already, and it's going to go out again in my weekly email probably on Sunday. There will be another link to Final Forms.
And you mentioned before, Tom, that getting on green in Final Forms. So I assume that's the green light that everything's turned in, right?
That's correct. Once the parent and the player signs, completes and signs all of the paperwork, and the physical is turned in to me, that's the only thing that they'll turn in to me is the actual papers that the doctor signs. It's a front and back. Some people turn in the whole physical packet, and that's fine. But I really only need the actual doctor's forms. The rest of it is all done online. And once it is, each one of those forms shows green. And that's what I'll be looking for on August 3rd. Any player that's not green will not be able to participate.
Okay. Thank you. Tom, what's the best way for parents, students to communicate with coaches when they're not at practice, say, or not in person?
Email would be the best way. That is absolutely the best way. My email is up and running pretty much 24/7. And as parents have been emailing me this summer, Usually it's a pretty quick response unless it comes in after about 9:30 when I'm in bed, in which case then they usually get a response by about 6 the next morning, because I'm a morning guy. Before my day can start, I got to get some coffee and get my workout in. So I always check my email first thing. Email would definitely be the best way to contact me.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions at this point. There's a little bit of delay, as we talked about, with the questions from YouTube, so we'll wait a little bit. Is there anything, Jen or Tom, you would like to add that we maybe haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I had one, another question from a parent that came up a couple of days ago. They emailed me because their son wanted a visor for his football helmet. And that's something that the kids like, the visors. They think they look cool. And I just wanted to clarify, because now I'm starting to see a number of companies are making the full face visors because of the COVID-19 issue. And those are, everything that I've read, those will be legal in terms of, NFHS rules and Ohio High School Athletic Association rules. But the clarification is they must be clear. You cannot, even a slight tint, or some of them have it almost looks like a rainbow haze on the front, almost like some sort of a polarization. They have to be 100% absolutely clear. They can't have any tint or anything. Otherwise, they have to be taken off before a game, and the officials will definitely check that. So if you want visors for your kids, that's great. I don't necessarily dislike them. They're perfectly fine. They're a good safety way to keep fingers out of their face mask. They must, in high school football and in middle school football in the state of Ohio, they must be clear. So,
okay.
Clarification.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Well, I think this question means, will parents get a list of the emails for our coaches? Or it just really, it says, will we get a list of all the coaches? Maybe it's just the names of the coaches.
I have sent out a list of, in my original email to parents, all the coaches' names were listed. I generally don't send parents a list of my coaches' emails because I want those emails to come through me first.
Yeah.
So if there would ever be a question specifically for a coach that I would want that coach to answer that I couldn't, I would absolutely forward it so that it could be answered. But yeah, I would prefer communication come through me.
Okay. So I don't see any other questions at this point. We'll wait a few seconds here. I'd like to say thank you to all the parents joining us tonight. We were supposed to meet last Wednesday when we had the tornado watch, and a couple of us, our power went out, so we weren't able to meet virtually. So we appreciate your patience and following up tonight and being with us. That was thank goodness there wasn't a tornado, but it was pretty bad for a few minutes. So.
I did get one other, while I'm thinking about it, I have one other note because it just came in today on my way home from practice today. I had a parent email me about playbooks. Our playbooks are available. They are online. We have a football Google Classroom where we post all of our pretty much everything. I sent a link out for that a while ago, but I know we have some new additions to the program. So I will be sending the link out for the Google Classroom again in my my Sunday email this week. So if you don't have that or have not signed up for the Google Classroom, you'll be able to this week again.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any other questions. We'll wait a couple seconds and see if any more come through. I think we had about 29 parents so far joined us tonight, so that's a nice turnout.
Great.
Thank you. I may not be up to date. That was at the beginning of our meeting. I think there's 34 viewing now. So
Great.
great. Thank you so much for being here. Are there any other questions you would like to ask? Okay, here's one. Okay. So this question is that this will be available, this chat. It's been recorded, and Coach, we'll get you the link so you can send it out in case anybody had a conflict and they weren't able to make it. I think this was very successful. I hope we answered all of your questions. And Tom Fogel and Jen Henley, thank you so much for being here tonight. Okay, we have one more question here. When will you distribute equipment?
It's a good question. We will probably start fitting for helmets in July. Because we normally try to get those on their noggins as soon as possible during some of those camp days, because the longer they wear them, the better they fit. And then normally we will fit the rest of their equipment usually that first week of August. We're still working out some details with our locker room situation, and we had a few details to work out before COVID-19, and we probably have a few more to work out now. So Jen and I will be kind of working through what that's going to look like, and I think we've got some good ideas about that, but it's probably going to look very different this year than any other year that anybody that's ever been in a football locker room, I don't know that it's going to look that way this year, but we'll work through it and make sure that everything is secure and well taken care of. So it's a great question, but yeah, we're going to try to start fitting helmets in July.
Okay. Well, I think we can close the meeting unless we have any more questions. We'll stay around if you have a last question or two you want to ask.
Well, and I can throw in too that if you missed a question or you didn't get a chance, or you just didn't feel like asking it in this forum, that everybody should know that you can email me at any point. I'm more than happy to answer questions at any time. So.
Okay. Oh, here's one more. Another question from a parent. Are you interested in additional assistant coaches?
There's a point where you can end up with too many cooks in the kitchen. We're pretty solid with our 13 right now. And I don't have any paid positions at this point. And if anybody's ever looked into becoming a volunteer coach, it's even just to volunteer, you have to go through the exact same process, certification process as all of our paid coaches. So it's kind of a pain.
and all of those things are really important.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks parents for joining us tonight. Maybe we even had some students, and again, Coach Tom Fogel, thank you so much. And Athletic Director Jen Henley, thank you. I'm glad we had a chance to meet. We were going to meet near the end of March, I believe, and then we had the school closure. So it's great to do it in this forum. It's maybe not as good as being in person, but it's close. And so we really appreciate you being here tonight. It's been a long 9 or 10 weeks, and we're glad that kids are out there and getting their exercise, and we think it's good for them. And so I'm going to give, not me, I'm going to take that away. I was going to give Tom a hand here. Didn't mean to give myself one. There. Anyway, I'm trying to learn how to do this.
You're way out of my technological zone right now.
But anyway, I thought, I think this was great. And anyway, let's give Tom and Jen a hand. Good job. And thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And
Great.
thanks Jeff Collette, our technology director, for
Yes.
being here tonight, helping us through this. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
guys.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.